just solder or tin the tip of this again. After cleaning it, it got a little wonky there. Some of these parts you're going to read in the thing are very heat sensitive, and you're like, what in the world? How can they be heat sensitive? You're heating them. By the way, this is set to 300 degrees Celsius right now, so if you see it fluctuating, that's what it's reading over there is the actual temperature of Celsius. And you're like, how is it heat sensitive? Well, that just means you can't hold the soldering iron to it quite as long as I am on some of these resistors. So making sure you have a well-prepared soldering iron is important. Otherwise, you kind of have to take little breaks along the way and make sure you don't overheat something. Now these resistors, they don't mind a little bit of heat. So they're a really good way doing the resistors first in the pack. I really appreciate that MikeParts.com did that in the instructions, because that certainly makes installing everything else, your comfort level rises a lot as you do the resistors. And so later on, you're feeling much better about what you're going to do to get everything else in place. And it's okay if you see a little like brown stuff build up on the board. That's called flux. I mean, your goal is to not get it to happen, but if you do, that 99% isopropyl alcohol that we used earlier, that I forgot to put the lid back on, that'll clean it right up in the end. It blew my mind the first time. I'm like, man, I thought that was just burnt spots on the board. No, it's really not. It's really just flux that gets on there. So as you go to clean your board later, you'll see that all that brown stuff just comes right off. And I just move these now as I need to, trying not to burn my hand, but you can set them to any angle as long as they get out of the way of what you're doing. You're okay there. Well, that was a really, really nice Hershey Kiss, if you can see it. And I will say, it's rarely the tip that is hot enough. It's kind of like side right behind the tip, I find, is where I get the best results. I'm sure I could heat up the soldering iron a little bit more and maybe get the tip to work a little bit better, but I kind of find that I have to work just barely off the side of the tip. Gives it a little more heat. Almost forgot that little guy, so make sure you're paying attention, that you work systematically. You'll notice I work from the far side to the close side as I go. It's trying to make sure that I get all the ones without missing any. And then kind of as I do those, I move them out of the way so I can get to the other ones. Just a few left here. Last one, I do believe. Okay, brush it off, which means the next time we go, we need to make sure we tin it. That gets all that flux and nasty junk off of it. Here is the finished product there. Show it to you up here. Kind of looks gnarly right now, but as I go through the snipping process here, I'm going to make sure that I really pay attention that those solder joints are nice and fully seated around the whole hole, and that that nothing looks like it's shorting any joints. Again, just trim as you can get pretty close. Don't trim it all off, of course, but trim it down pretty close because you don't want any leftover frays that could mess up wires or like accidentally get bent and touch another thing, because if they do bend and touch, that is the definition of a shorted out circuit. So you don't want to bypass the important parts. Even if they were parts that linked later on, you don't want to bypass important parts, and you don't want to short stuff and send it to ground, especially, because then you will get no signal. So just keep your eyes on what you're doing, make sure everything looks nice and clean. I shot that one at you guys at home. As far as the tools to do this with go, there are a few places that I like to use. One is, of course, MikeParts.com. He sells the kits, he sells the tools. They're a little more expensive, but not bad. Not bad at all. None of these tools are like crazy expensive by any stretch of the imagination. A lot of them I got off Amazon. And there you go. There's a completed board. Show you down here too. A lot of them I got at Amazon. And what I didn't get at Amazon or MikeParts.com, I got at StewMac. And StewMac is a guitar building, amp building company. And they sell great tools. Highly recommend them. So I'm going to clean up my workbench here a little bit. I've got board 1 soldered with all its resistors. Board 1 and board 2. They are set and ready to go. Okay, be back in just a minute with next step.